The daughters of Zelophehad changed history because they dared to speak up. Their courage became part of God's law, a law that shaped Israel's future. Numbers chapter 27, verse 7. The daughters of Zelophehad are right, says the Lord. Imagine a world where daughters had no right to inherit anything. Throughout history, women's voices have often been silenced, their rights overlooked. But in the wilderness of Sinai, 5 courageous sisters stepped forward and changed the law of God's people forever. This is the story of the daughters of Zelophehad, a story of courage, justice, and divine intervention. Today we shall look through the book of Numbers, chapter 27, verse 1 to 11, where we see how this was made possible. In ancient Israel, inheritance was a matter of honor and survival. Land wasn't just property, it was life itself. It was identity. It was the promise God gave to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. But there was a problem. The law of inheritance passed everything through the male line. If a man had no sons, his name and his share of the promised land would vanish. This was exactly the case for one family in the tribe of Manasseh. Now, Zelophehad, son of Hepher, had no sons, only daughters: Mahlah, Noah, Hoglah, Milcah, and Tirzah. Their father, Zelophehad, had died. He had no sons. According to tradition, this meant their family name and their share of the promised land would vanish forever. They were about to lose their family's inheritance forever. In this day and age, it's still common that women hardly inherit anything except their father wills it. But if he dies before one is drawn, the daughters are left in great uncertainty. The 5 sisters, standing tall, approached the leader's tent. Most people would have stayed silent, but these 5 sisters chose courage over fear. They went to the very heart of authority: Moses, the high priest Eleazar, the tribal leaders, and the entire assembly. They stood before Moses, Eleazar the priest, the leaders, and the whole assembly and said, "Our father died in the wilderness, but he had no sons. Why should our father's name disappear from his clan? Give us property among our father's relatives." Imagine the boldness. In a society where women rarely challenged the system, these sisters demanded justice in front of the entire nation. Read Numbers chapter 27, verse 2 to 4, especially if you're a daughter whose family won't even hear of a daughter inheriting anything. Moses didn't answer them immediately. He did something greater. He brought their case before the Lord. So Moses, lifting his hands in prayer, seeking God, brought their case before the Lord. And the Lord said to him, "The daughters of Zelophehad are right." Did you hear that? God himself declared, "The daughters are right." Their voices mattered. Their claim was just. You must certainly give them property as an inheritance among their father's relatives, and give their father's inheritance to them. This wasn't just a personal victory. It set a precedent that would shape Israel's future. God established a new law through this case, a law that ensured fairness and protected family names in Israel. Say to the Israelites, "If a man dies and leaves no son, give his inheritance to his daughter. If he has no daughter, give his inheritance to his brothers. If he has no brothers, give it to his father's brothers. If his father had no brothers, give his inheritance to the nearest relative in his clan." Read Numbers 27 verse 8 to 11 to get a mind visual of the flowchart of inheritance. This became the divine statute of judgment for Israel. The courage of 5 sisters rewrote the law. From that moment, a new law was written into Israel's history. This wasn't just about land. It was about justice, family honor, and God's care for every generation, male and female. The elders held a meeting, with some of them wearing worried faces, land boundaries drawn. But the story doesn't end there. In Numbers 36, the leaders of Manasseh raised another concern. If these daughters inherit land and later marry men from other tribes, the land could pass to another tribe. God gave a safeguard. The daughters of Zelophehad may marry anyone they wish, but they must marry within their father's tribal clan. No inheritance in Israel is to pass from one tribe to another. And so the balance was struck. Women could inherit, but the tribal inheritance remained protected. Here are some lessons for today. The daughters of Zelophehad teach us powerful lessons even today. 1. God listens to every voice, male or female, rich or poor. 2. Justice sometimes requires courage. Speak up, even when culture says you shouldn't. 3. God cares about family and legacy. He protects names, promises, and inheritances. 4. One act of courage can shape the destiny of a nation. Their story is a reminder that God's law is not cold or distant. It is alive, compassionate, and just. The daughters of Zelophehad changed history because they dared to speak up. Their courage became part of God's law, a law that shaped Israel's future. A challenge for us to look at is that the daughters of Zelophehad stood before Moses and all of Israel, and God said, "They are right." So I ask you today, in your family, in your community, in your faith, what issue needs courage? What will you stand for, even when it feels risky? What do you think? Would you have had the courage to stand before the leaders just like they did? Because one voice, or 5 voices united, can change history. Numbers chapter 27, verse 7. The daughters of Zelophehad are right, says the Lord. If you learned a new thing and enjoyed watching, please subscribe and come back next time. Thank you for watching.